Welcome back to Obsolete Automotive. I'm Austin, and today's video is going to be on my 1962 Chrysler Newport. I picked this car up in Wakeman, Ohio from the same place I got the 56 Plymouth wagon from. The difference in the weather from when I got this to when I got the wagon was two extremes. It went from a warm 65 degrees when I picked this car up to the next weekend when I got the wagon to being under 20 degrees and snowing. And I had to go through a blizzard to get home with that car. I'll post a link to that video on the 56 Plymouth wagon, so be sure to check it out. Anyways, this 1962 Chrysler Newport is pretty much like any other 62 Chrysler Newport. It does have something odd about it and something rare about it. And if you know me, you know I like oddball, weird cars. So let's just see what makes this car a little more unique than your typical 62 Chrysler Newport. I'll just cut to the chase and show you what makes this car so unique and rare. Now, this car does have the original aluminum keys with the forward look emblems and a cool keychain. So let's see what makes this car so unique. Immediately you should notice 3 pedals and a floor shifter. So yes, this car is one of the rare factory 3-speed manual floor shift varieties. It was the standard transmission choice for the 62 Newport, but not a whole lot of them came with this transmission. You know, Chrysler was more of a upscale car, but starting with this 1961 Newport nameplate, basically this was a cheap car. It kind of replaced the DeSoto when it went out of business, so this was kind of what you could get for having a more upscale car but still be, I don't know, budget priced. So advertising for this 62 Chrysler would show that basically the list price would be $2,964, and that would basically get you this, a bare bones 3-speed manual 4-door sedan, and as you can see, radio delete. So this is what you would get basically. Now this car does have a few options that are kind of unusual from the 62 Newports that I've owned and seen, and I'll get into that here in a second. So I had to have this car mainly because, well, I like weird oddball cars, and it has a 3-speed manual transmission, and yes, it's factory. I do own a 1963 Chrysler Newport that is also a 3-speed manual, and I drove it from Montana on a recent, well, I guess it's been a couple months now, road trip, and I will post links to that in the description. That way you can check out action driving of a 3-speed manual car. So it's basically got the same engine and transmission that this car has. Now there you can see the seats have been recovered. They would have originally had a cloth insert, and this one is all vinyl, which nothing wrong with that. The door panels are original, as well as the headliner, which has a neat basket weave pattern. The carpet isn't original, it's been replaced, and it still needs some finishing touches. You can see the sill plates aren't installed. If you're familiar with 60 to 62 Chryslers, you'll immediately recognize this gauge cluster. It's what they call an AstraDome, and it's really cool, very space age. You can see it's, you know, kind of 3-dimensional. The gauges are all set in there. They're kind of free floating, and the gauges and numbers themselves don't use light bulbs. So basically, they called it panelescent or electroluminescent, and it's electrically charged. So the needles, the numbers, and everything, the stuff on the gauge, it's electrically charged with a transformer that makes it glow. It has this nice, soft, easy on the eyes, essentially, bluish, greenish glow to it. It's really neat when it works. This car's, it does work, but I think some capacitors and stuff might need to be replaced because it'll come on initially and then slowly fade to nothing, which is kind of common for these having not been ever rebuilt or anything. Now I want to get this working because really cool when it does work. You just have to see one in person to kind of experience it. But yeah, very unique feature of these cars. But this is also one of the reasons why these cars had the 3-speed manual for the standard transmission option. So started in 1961, Chrysler offered the 3-speed manual, and there was no place to put a conventional column shift 3-speed, which is typical for other cars of the era and other Mopars, because, well, as you can see, this is all one unit. It encircles the whole thing. Not a lot of space here for the shifter. You'd be hitting your hand on the dash and such like that. So with that, also with space considerations, the turn signal stalk isn't here where it'd normally be. It's here on the dash. And you can see you got left and right. It works the same, it's just you don't have it here where it typically is. Now this car is equipped with a few options that aren't normally seen on Newports, but as per typical, it does not have a power antenna. So if you had a power antenna, this switch would work. Here's the dome light switch, map light, which this car is equipped with, so that switch is there. And then here's your rear window, which could be your defogger, and I believe on the station wagons this would also be for the window roll down and up on your station wagons. Here's your wiper switch and your light switch here. So you got park and then headlights, so 2 clicks. And you can see that there is a push button delete plate here. If you had an automatic, this is where your drive selections would be, but since this is a manual transmission, it has this block off plate here. Now here on the right side, we got our heater controls. It has a slider here, which is for cold or hot, and then your fan controls as well as defrost and the air vent. On this car, the ignition switch will light up when you turn on the park lights. Can't really see it right now because it's daylight, but that'll glow blue so you can find where to put your key. Now this car has a radio delete plate, but I want to say it looks like it originally had a radio because I can kind of see it back there. So it may have had a radio in it. I don't know if this dash got cut up for an aftermarket radio. I'm going to guess so because I can kind of see some damage there. So maybe this was put here just to cover up where the radio used to be. This is where a clock would go if the car was optioned with one. Of course, you got to have an ashtray. There's your cigar or cigarette lighter. All the cars came with the padded dash. This one's actually in really good shape. Normally they're all busted up. This car does not have a day-night mirror. And we do have a hula girl here. Glove box. And 62 had this handy access for your fuses. So you could get to your fuses in the glove box instead of what most cars you'd normally have to go underneath the dashboard to get to them. In 62 they decided to put them here. Very handy, pretty smart idea. Looks like this car is equipped with a glove box light. I see a switch there, but it doesn't look like the bulb's working. Very space age. I love it. I love the dashboards of these cars. Very unique and very cool. Unlock the back door here. Oh, there we go. Probably hasn't been opened a whole lot. Again, original door panel. Seats obviously have been recovered. You do have an ashtray back here. And this car has manual roll-up windows. And this right here is how you lock the back doors. You push these down and that locks them. Take a exterior look at this car. It does not have the original wheels. It has late 70s and 80s Mopar police rally, I guess you could call them, wheels. But they fit on these cars. They give it a certain look if that's what you're after, but these police wheels are are not correct, obviously. So like I said, these are from the late 70s and into the 1980s on police cars. A lot of people, since you had the Chevy rally wheel, a lot of people will call this a Mopar rally wheel, but it's just a police spec wheel with the 6 vent holes in it. Now this car is originally a black car. I do really like black cars. They have a certain look about them. I'm going to eventually put on some more correct wheels and tires. It did come with the original wheels, but they have some ancient wide white walls on them, so I'm going to put some newer appropriate tires on the original wheels and then put these wheels in storage, and I'll put the original wheels and the original dog dish hubcaps on this car. '62 was the second year of the canted headlights on Chryslers. And then no more fins. The fins were gone for Chrysler in 1962. And if you've seen my video on the Dodge 880 for 1962, you'll see that this is the same car essentially. So I'll post a link to that video so you can see the comparison of that with a 62 Newport, because I have 2 of these now. So the 62 Dodge 880 was essentially made from the 62 Chrysler Newport. That's a whole unique automotive history detail that's really neat, so be sure to check out that video, as well as the video of me getting my other 62 Chrysler Newport and getting it running. Post links to that in the description. Now this car still has its tail light lenses, which are hard to come by on these 62s because with the design of them being exposed to sunlight, they just seem to always die horrible deaths. Now this one's got some cracks to it, so you gotta be careful, do some little repairs to it. We'll check out the trunk since we're back here. And you can see it's got some spare parts and some of the interior stuff. There's the original dog dish hubcaps, an old snow tire, and it does still have the original card trunk liner. Trunk floor is in pretty good shape. All in all, this car is in excellent shape considering it was up in Ohio where stuff usually rots away due to the salt. So this car is in pretty good shape. I did notice that it does have a trunk light as well, so that's another option that this Newport has, which is a little unique because usually the Newports that I've seen or owned basically were devoid of any options. Usually they had an automatic and power steering seemed to be the common options on these cars, but otherwise they usually didn't have any. Now this car also is equipped with the Solex tinted glass. It's got that green tint. Might be hard to see, but that's kind of unique because usually these cars just have clear glass. We'll look under the hood here. Under the hood is the original 361 cubic inch big block V8. And you can see that this car has power brakes and power steering. Otherwise, for the most part, is mostly original. Ignition's been upgraded, some little things like that, but otherwise seems to be all original. Overflow tank is not original. That master cylinder looks pretty old, so I'm probably going to go through the brakes on this thing. It does run, it's running pretty rich, so it's going to need a little help here and there. The battery's pretty old. We'll see if it starts because it was kind of weak, especially with this cold weather. And 62 Chryslers were equipped with alternators. But yeah, not a whole lot going on under the hood. There is some Rust issues down low. You can see a patch there on the fender, some rot on the rocker, some bubbles here and there. But really, the rest of the car is actually in really good shape. This side's better than the other side. Car does not have an Edelbrock carburetor on it, so I'll probably remove these stickers. I'm just not really big on stickers like that. And in the back here is Barbie, I guess. So she might stay for a while, but I'll probably take her out too. Not really era correct. I'm going to put the original wheels on. It'll definitely give this car kind of an official business look, like a fleet or police vehicle, which I like that kind of look myself. So let's see if this thing will start. So she definitely needs some tuning. Got a little smoke going on there. She's running pretty rich, maybe burning a little oil, but this car probably didn't get driven a whole lot in the past, 10 years or so. So we'll see. We'll do a little tune up, look through the engine, make sure there's no issues, and then maybe just start driving it. And usually that'll make stuff clear up. Oh, and in case you were wondering, there's the gas fill. Now I do have a unique opportunity. Well, I guess it's not really unique since I have a lot of these cars, but we can see how a 62 Chrysler compares with a 61 Chrysler, because I got one right there. This carburetor, I think, needs some help. And there you have it, 61 Chrysler Newport versus 1962 Chrysler Newport. Now I do have a video on this 61 Chrysler Newport. It's also a unique car with the rear Highlander interior package. This car differs from the 62 in the fact that it is a four-door hardtop. But like I said, I do have a video on this car you can check out. I'll post a link to that in the description. As you can see, the front end's very similar. You can see a difference in the grille. The front bumpers and turn signals are essentially the same. The big difference, of course, is when you go to the back of the cars. So, 61 versus 62. 61, we got fins. And then in 62, they're lopped off. But otherwise, they're kind of essentially the same car. There are some differences when it comes to the, I guess, the drivetrains and such between 61 and 62. 62 saw the introduction of the aluminum 727 torque flat, whereas the 61 still had the old cast iron top. So the floor pans are different. The trans hump is smaller in the 62 due to the smaller tail shaft of the 727. But essentially they're the same car. You can see the differences here in the profile of the quarters. But yeah, figured I'd show these side by side just because it's kind of neat when you can see both of them side by side to see the differences between 61 and 62. And I guess I should have moved my van so it was a little more of a focused viewing, but I'm sure y'all don't care too much. Now I have two of these under my ownership, so I like them. A lot of people, they're not a big fan of, you know, the 62 and up Chryslers. The 62 is kind of like a 1 year, I guess, body style for Chrysler, because in 63 they went to the totally redesigned body, which some hate even more, I guess. I like them, but I also like weird stuff, so maybe that's why. But these are nice cars. The buy-in for one of these cars is pretty low. You can find pretty decent ones for relatively reasonable pricing. Parts are plentiful. There's a lot of interchange. So these cars, they're unique. Not a lot of people know about them just because, well, like I said, they're not the most popular car, but also the fact that like people just don't know they exist. But anyways, I've had several 62 Chrysler Newports over the years, and I just really like them myself. So maybe I can complete the collection and have 61 and 64 Chrysler Newports with 3-speed manuals, because then I'll have all of them, 61 to 64, because I have now this 62 and I had the 63, which I still need to repair because the engine blew up, which I think I got a solution for that. When I bought this car, it came with a couple more big blocks, so I think I'll be able to swap one of those in, then take my time on taking the original 361 and the 63 apart and kind of investigating it and then rebuilding or whatever needs to happen. So stay tuned for that. I know a lot of people have asked about that car, and I haven't forgotten about it. I still have it. I just got to put a plan in motion. I don't have a whole lot of space, indoor space, so I'm going to have to do a bunch of shuffling, and, you know, it's just, some stuff's just going to have to go outside for a little bit while I work on this stuff. The downsides of not having a huge property with huge buildings to do all your car stuff in. I have to do everything outside, and it's been cold and rainy and snowy and just not conducive to working on cars. But anyways, be sure to check out the other videos that I've posted, as well as the video on the 56 Plymouth wagon that I got from the same guy in the same place, as well as the video on getting my other 62 Newport and getting that car running, because it had been off the road for a long time. So you'll probably find that enjoyable. And then you can kind of compare the two of those. They're a little bit different. That car has way less options, but it doesn't have a manual transmission, which this one does. So I don't know if this car was ordered by somebody. That seems to be a case a lot of times with the manual transmission cars. They were either the cheapest thing that the dealer had on the lot, or somebody specifically ordered it. This car having power steering, power brakes, the tinted glass, the glove box lot, the trunk lot, the map light and all that stuff makes me think that maybe somebody ordered this car. I think it also had a radio originally. So like there's a lot of options that generally the cheapo dealer special wouldn't have, because it would just be the cheapest thing they could have, and it would have the manual transmission. That seems to be the case. So this car, I don't know really the history of it prior to the guy I got it from. He got it from a farmer's family. So this car was bought new by a farmer, which makes sense. I've had a lot of cars over the years that were bought by farmers, and they wanted manual transmissions. They didn't really want an automatic. They weren't used to automatics. So they wanted something that was going to be simple, easy to work on, what have you. So I've had a lot of cars over the years that farmers owned, and they pretty much always got a manual transmission. My other 63 Chrysler Newport two-door hardtop that I owned, which I have a video on that as well, was also a 3-speed manual transmission, and it was owned by a farmer, and he ordered it that way. And it also had power steering and some other options that you wouldn't normally find. It had a power seat too, which I thought was odd, but he wanted the manual transmission. So it's just normally how it goes, especially the older folks. So I think they grew up driving cars when they were only manual transmissions. So of course, when they were older and they wanted to get a new car, they usually got a manual transmission because that's just what they were used to. So it's just neat to find one of these cars. I don't know of a whole lot of these 62 Newports that exist with the manual transmission. There's a few I've seen over the years, but the production of the manual transmission Chryslers from 61 to 64 are very, very low. So the survival rate, I guess, is pretty low, but I have a knack of finding them. So when I find one, I usually buy it because it's neat, and I like to share this neat tidbits that maybe most people don't care about. I don't know, but I find the fact that you could have got a Chrysler in the early 60s with a manual floor shift transmission. I just find it kind of neat. So I had to have it. So now it's here. And I want to get it fixed up, probably drive it around a bit, and just enjoy it. Yeah, we definitely got to do something with that carburetor. And the battery. And the carburetor. And probably some other things. So I'm here doing a little work on the 62 Chrysler, and one of the things I need to figure out is why this car seems to be burning fuel. So anytime you crank this thing up, it leaves a big soot mark on the driveway. If you rev it, it's smoking. It's definitely unburnt fuel. So there's a few things you can check. I've already looked at the carburetor and did some adjusting. Carburetor seems to be fine. It actually looks like it's some kind of replacement carburetor that's been rebuilt, so it actually seems to function pretty good. I adjusted the mixture screws, but this is dumping a lot of fuel, or getting fuel from somewhere, so I needed to kind of determine why that is. I've looked down the throat of the carburetor. It's not flooding out. It's not dumping fuel unnecessarily, so I'm thinking that the carburetor's not really at fault here. One thing to check is the fuel pump. Is it putting fuel where it shouldn't go? And I've had this happen before, but the easiest way to check is pull out the dipstick, and you can look at the oil and see if it's kind of thin. This doesn't look too terribly thin, but it does have a little bit of runniness to it. But give it a smell, and as I thought, this oil smells like gas. So now I can really see this starting to run down the stick. But so basically I'm thinking the fuel pump maybe is dumping fuel into the crankcase, and that's kind of just getting burnt. It's gonna not let the piston rings in the cylinder seal, so it's probably burning fuel. I had this happen on another car before, actually a few times on other cars. I had a 74 Dodge Coronet police car, and every time you cranked that thing up, it just bellowed smoke. Like it was just like running horrible, blowing blue smoke out everywhere. And everyone thought that the car needed a new engine, but replacing the fuel pump on that and doing an oil change fixed it. The rings started sealing up, and one by one they sealed, and it stopped burning oil and burning fuel in the crank from the crankcase, which was just, like I said, it was just kind of blowing past the rings and burning. So that fixed that. So I'm hoping this is kind of a just happened, but yeah, you can see the oil is kind of separating, it's running. So what I need to do is replace the fuel pump, I guess, and do an oil change on this and just take that out of the equation. Now on these big block Mopars, the fuel pump is here on the passenger side. And it does appear that it's been replaced at some point, but it has been there a little while at least. So I'll go pull one out of my parts stash and get that installed. Gaskets. Got a brand new one here. Always keep fuel pumps on the shelf because you always need one when you get cars. So I'm gonna put this new one on. Then do an oil change, and hopefully that fixes the problem of the fuel that's in the crankcase, which I'm guessing that's how it's getting in there. Because like I said, it doesn't look like the carburetor's dumping fuel, so this must be a case of diaphragm leaking fuel into the crankcase. So let's get this taken care of. Go ahead and get the fuel line disconnected here. There's a metal one and a rubber one. And in typical fashion, just sliced my wrist. Cool. Fan blades are a little sharp. All right, got the metal line off. I reached into my pocket and my pocket knife wasn't there, so I actually had to get a screwdriver. Crazy. I think I left my pocket knife in my other pants. Okay. Rubber line disconnected. A shallow 9/16 socket. Try not to drop everything. Okay, got it off. You can tell this has been replaced at some point. It's got the same gasket as my new one. So I like to stick the bolts in. Kind of thread it, there we go, through the gasket. And that'll keep the bolts from falling out when you're trying to finagle this thing back in. And also make sure that the gasket is lined up correctly, that it doesn't fall out of the position or get twisted into the wrong spot. The push rod has fallen down. So there's a push rod that pushes the pump arm on the fuel pump on these big blocks. And in a lot of cases they'll stay where they're at, but it seems in this case it's fallen down. Now there is a little plug on the block that you can take out, and that way you can push up the push rod with, say, like a screwdriver or something, and hold it up while you slip the fuel pump in. So let's see if I can get this. Sometimes you can just get the rod to lift up. Wipe off this oil. Okay. Yep, this one's going up. Keep getting oil on it so it starts slipping. Okay. I don't know how many of these I've replaced on the side of the road, and the push rod stayed where it was at long enough to where I could get the new pump in, but in typical fashion this one's not wanting to cooperate, probably because I'm filming it. Okay, screwdriver holds it up. Let's see if we can get the arm in there. Need to switch hands here. Okay, got the push rod on top of the pump arm. Now I can get the bolts tightened up. This is nowhere near as fun to do when the engine's like hot after you've been driving a ways and then your fuel pump fails or something. So in this case, the push rod was actually a little bit down. You could spin the motor over some and have it torch all the way in the up position, but you can also just put one bolt in, then kind of rock the fuel pump over to push the arm down, and then get the other bolt going, which is what I just did. Okay, fuel pump is mounted. Now let's hook up the fuel lines again. Put the rubber one on. Screw the metal one on. All right, fuel line is back connected. And now we need to jack this car up and drain the oil and change the filter and put some new oil in. And it smells like straight gas. And does anyone else mark the filter with the date and mileage? Now I had bought this big jug of oil because it was like 3 gallons, it's 12 quarts, and it was like the best deal. It was like really cheap, it's like on sale. But I mean, they got this personal oil tracker here, but I guess I don't have a picture, so I don't they don't have like a guide on their meter to see what oil level you're at. So I guess I'm going to use 1 quart of oil and then refill it with this. Next time I guess I should make sure I have a pitcher to dispense that with. What's the likelihood I dump a bunch of oil everywhere? Probably high. Okay, okay. Appears the smoke is gone. Every time you rev the engine before, it would smoke. Now, nothing. So it was probably just sucking in that gas infused oil and just burning it. We'll see if it keeps making soot marks. Well, I got this car back to looking like my kind of car. This is kind of my aesthetic, which is basically putting the car back original. So I got the original steel wheels with dog dish hubcaps, and I put some Blackwall bias ply tires on here. Kind of makes the car look like what, honestly, it probably looked like when it was new. It also gives it a very official look. So it kind of looks like a government vehicle, which I kind of like that aesthetic. So definitely made the car back to original, but also back to things how I like them. So this car now, with its fuel pump issue fixed, the motor's running good, it's not smoking like it was, and this car I discovered can do a pretty good burnout. It does have a few interesting options that you don't normally see, like the tinted glass, the power steering and power brakes, things like that, but it does have the stick shift. Now, this car did belong to a farmer, and it seems a lot of times these cars, when they were owned by people that were older generation or farmers, they always had the manual transmission. They just weren't a big fan of automatics. All their equipment were manual transmissions, so I think that's just kind of why they got them. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Also, check out my Instagram at Obsolete Automotive, as well as my Patreon and Facebook discussion group, where you can kind of see some more stuff, extra content, or show a little support for the channel. All of that is much appreciated. Post links to that in the description as well, so check that out. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I got some more trips and other stuff in the future. It's quite cold out here. The weather's been kind of bad, so I haven't had the ability to do a lot of things. It kind of sucks when you have to work outside. No garage to work in at the moment. So anyways, thanks for following along, and we'll catch you on the next one.